Common Sense Radio.
I want to get right to Ian Tuttle, who has been generous with his time here. I know he's a busy man. Ian Tuttle, and he is a great writer at the National Review, and a recent article regarding President Trump and the anti-Semitism charge. And the great thing about Ian is he's an equal opportunity slayer. He has never been like fully in the tank for President Trump. And I've always been a huge fan of Ian Tuttle and President Trump, and sometimes Ian and his views on President Trump. I'm like, oh, I wish he didn't say that. But you know what? He's a reporter. I'm a Trump guy, and I appreciate what he does. And this time he's coming to bat over for the Trump administration, at least in the call for fairness over this whole anti-Semitism thing. Ian, thanks so much for being with us. Really appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks for having me.
So tell me, you've looked into this whole thing regarding this anti-Semitism charge against the Trump administration, and what have you been finding in terms of the reality?
Yeah, so people are probably aware that there's been an apparent rash of anti-Semitic incidents, bomb threats being called into Jewish community centers, and the vandalism at the St. Louis area Jewish cemetery. And of course, a lot of people have said, "Oh, this is a result of Trump and the rise of the alt-right," and people need to be aware that the Trump administration has sort of led to this. And I think that calls for two questions. One is we need to look at the data and see if there's actually a spike in anti-Semitic incidents. And the second is, okay, if there is, what's the cause? And I think on both of those questions, it's hard to draw conclusions. If you look at the data that's available to us, you see hate crimes, according to the FBI, declining. At least anti-religious hate crimes declining over the past several years until 2015, and then there's a spike, including a spike in anti-Semitic incidents. But we don't have the numbers for 2016, so the year that really would be relevant to figuring out, if Trump has had any effect on, bias crimes, we don't have that data. The same is true for the Anti-Defamation League, which keeps its own statistics on anti-Jewish incidents, a slightly different metric. The numbers just aren't there, and of course they note that there was a spike, there was a gradual decline for several years until 2014. And of course Trump wasn't on the national stage in 2014, but then there was an increase, so you can't blame him for that spike. So you look at these different, you look at the data that's available, and it doesn't look like we can draw hard conclusions. Now, I've been a critic of Donald Trump in the way that he, in my opinion, seems to indulge the alt-right and some of the worst sort of impulses on the right. But look, if you're going to level an accusation, you need evidence. And I just don't think the evidence is there yet. Yeah,
I noticed you point out that there was a 21% increase in some of these anti-Semitic incidents since 2013. And again, as you point out, President Trump was not on the national stage. It doesn't mean people have to be just going to wave over the influence of some of the darker elements of the alt-right. But at the same time, as you point out, listen, if we're going to put, like with this guy from the Anne Frank Center, if he's going to sit there and directly charge the Trump administration with causing gravestone topplings and everything else, you got to be true with your facts. Now, I want to ask you, too, you mentioned that there are sometimes, like, for instance, the incidents in Gaza that tend to be sometimes prompting certain levelings of threats and those kinds of things. I noticed that some of what we saw with the bomb threats and everything else happened after, it was about a week or so after this meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu. Do you think there's any link to the president's actual support of Israel that is blowing back on him in a different way, and that's being extended and articulated in these threats and those kind of things? Do you think that has had an impact on these, and that would not be President Trump's fault?
Yes, it's a possibility. The bomb threats have come in 4 waves, basically, over a month and a half. There were 3 in January, each almost a week apart, or a little more than that, and then one, of course, earlier this week. So, it depends on, are the same people doing this, or are these different groups sort of acting as copycats? It's very hard to know until we actually know who's going in these threats. And to my knowledge, there haven't been any arrests on that front, so it's difficult. But the point, of course, here is that as with the Gaza war in 2014, these news events sort of do affect people at the margins. And so, when the military campaign was going on in July and August of 2014, people who are very sensitive to that issue and are sort of already susceptible to maybe committing violence were, pushed over the edge. And so it's very difficult. It's very difficult to sort of draw connections between A and B. You have to, be looking at it to a certain extent from a distance and with some dispassion. And the fact of the matter is that what's happened over the past month, a lot of reflexively anti-Trump commentators have leapt on for to score partisan points, and I don't think that's responsible journalism.
No doubt about it. Well, Ian Tuttle, thanks so much for spending time with us. You do great work there, and we appreciate the objectivity and the approach and the research, and thanks so much. You're doing great work, and appreciate your time on the show this morning. Ian Tuttle, at IP Tuttle is where you can find him. Tweet him back and thank him for the daylight here when it comes to what is a very controversial subject. So thanks, my friend, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
All right, that is Ian Tuttle. Yeah, he's been pretty hard on President Trump in the past. But again, this anti-Semitism thing is a bunch of BS. And so, as much as I've been critical of the National Review and some of the people on it, Ian is definitely not one of the people who I think is just a never-Trumper hack out there. He's been doing pretty good work. And again, the facts speak for themselves. Yeah, and on the other side of this break, we'll pop into this Goldstein guy in the Anne Frank Center, which is really now being quickly debunked, although the media seem to just love him, every word that comes out of his mouth, because they agree with him. It's kind of like the town hall meetings. They love those folks because they agree with him. 969-9797.